And we are recording on Monday, December 22nd, 2025 at 12:08 p.m. Eastern Time with Mr. Dominick, Bruno, and Ian Burlingame. And Ian rudely ghosted me and Donnie the other day. He was playing hard to get. But Donnie and I are strong, independent women, and we don't need no man. So we did a 3 hour show together. And Donnie's my best friend now, not EM. And we talked out of our ass 3 hours. Yeah, as always, I'm going to pull another episode out of my ass today. So can you guys just continue exactly what you were just talking about? Or not,
Asked
or
me
whatever. I don't care.
how one of Queen Elizabeth's sons is actual Shakespeare. Is that
Really?
the well? That's what the movie articulated. There's some historical concept for maybe that's probably true, right?
Yeah,
There's
there's a lot to that question and that story. There's that version of it. There's stuff that's buried in Shakespeare that no playwright should know. So some people think that it was one of John Dee's spies in the court of Europe. There's Shakespeare's just a bottomless rabbit hole,
yeah,
but the best
yeah.
kind.
What started that is the conversation about how do we determine who are the old stock, as we go about undoing multicultural, the illusion and lie that is multiculturalism and diversity, and get back to who and what we are. Where do we define those lines, right? And there's a term, which I think is the appropriate one, which is old stock. Okay, but what makes you old stock, particularly in a people that are over 1,000 years on? What makes you old stock? Well, it's got to be that your ancestors, not your frickin' people, right? Or somebody who looks like you or has the ethnic background as you, but your family fought in one or more of the great defining conflicts, wars. And I don't mean conflicts as in frickin' DEI departments in universities, right? Or corporations, but I mean in a bloodbath. So that's what started the conversation, and then got us to Shakespeare and rabbit chase, waistcoated stopwatch or pocket watch carrying rabbits, right?
Tick, tick, tick. Yeah, I mean, this would be a real heroic effort to dovetail that into, I guess, the further moving of National Guard to, it seems like every major city in the United States. I guess, EM, you can talk on this more. This, not that I'm aware of, has ever happened in my lifetime. I mean, what, 1992, I think, Insurrection Act, HW, but that was LA. How are these? This is a monumental movement to do this, and I'm not 100% on board with it because I look at it as like, am I okay with having my political enemy have that power? And the answer is no. However, there's also a reading of the room and looking at where we are now. Are any of these things related in terms of establishing what is America? Because a lot of the reason, right, is whoever said it, it's like if Trump can't, if the president, if the commander in chief cannot deport an illegal MS-13 alien, then we don't have a
Who's
country.
committed murder and rape in our country,
Then we don't have a country.
then we
If the
don't have a
commander
country.
in chief, not just the mayor, so just him up
Yeah.
there, and then who are they? Is it me? No, no, no. A non-citizen gang member murderer. If he can't remove him, bro, I mean,
Well, and not only that, but if he can't remove him because we have some judge who's foreign born, who
yeah.
shouldn't have been on the bench in the United States in the first damn place. This is why the Act of Settlement and then become the Acts of Settlements in 1701 were put in place in England. This is why, if I remember correctly, we used to have a similar policy here until the 1840s. And then we needed our 1850s, and then we needed people because of the Civil War. And then we flooded a whole lot of your people in here, Tommy. Something like 700,000 of them, 300,000 of them whose bones still litter the battlefields of the Civil War.
Yeah, no, my dad actually like a year or two ago, yeah, he found some Carrigans in the Lincoln's army.
Yeah.
So I also want reparations. I just want to put
On
that
both
out
sides,
there.
by the way. So your reparations would cancel each other out.
No, I think no, no, yeah, no. These guys would know. I think it was only from New Hampshire.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I do want my
Yeah. Yeah.
reparations. I
Ah,
mean,
okay. Okay. I gotcha.
yeah, so I'm actually 100% on board for reparations for all the wrong reasons. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's what did you say it was? The axe or okay,
The Act of Settlement, 1701
gotcha.
in the United Kingdom. And the reason is that when the Inglorious Revolution occurred, what were they doing? They were flooding all of the positions of authority, the judgeships, mayoral. The same thing they're doing with Pakistanis and Indians today in the United Kingdom. They were just flooding every bit, and businesses, corporations, financial institutions, et cetera. It was all done the same way, by the way, because it was bankrolling and financing it. The Dutch Venetian bankers. And so they were putting their people in all these positions of authority and power. And so the English peoples and some of the nobility got, the commons and the nobility got together and they passed the Act of Settlement, which said both of your parents had to be English born if you were going to be in a position of, any kind of authority. Well, that had to be done because the English peoples were getting wiped out in their own land, not only demographically, but more importantly, they were getting wiped out in the ability to earn a living, in the ability to earn any wealth, in the ability to have control and say over the institutions that actually regulated their day-to-day lives. Well, doesn't that look familiar?
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, okay, yes, you have to have the ability to earn a living. That living has to be nested within an ecosystems, and then you have to be able to maintain it over time. And each one of those, from an immune system point of view, is a potential attack vector.
Correct.
Right. And so,
Correct.
when you talk about these acts of settlement or, the debates that raged around the U.S. Constitution about whether or not the president could be foreign born and ultimately the native born side won, I look at all of those as like an attempt to update the immune system. Right. It's like
Yes.
the resentfuls found a new attack vector. We had these founding documents. We have these laws there. They're insufficient for the resentfuls because the resentfuls have a full-time job of finding new attack vectors, right?
Yes.
They never sleep. Meanwhile, the responsibles have jobs to do and families to raise, et cetera. And so they're not looking for attack vectors all the time. And so you end up with, you can kind of look at like political history, Magna Carta forward as each time is okay. We did a good job. We plugged all the attack vectors we knew about, let the clock run for any period of time, and the resentfuls have found a new set of attack vectors that require a further update.
Yeah. So very good, Dominic. That's the eternal war doctrine
Yeah, that
systems,
it goes forever. Yeah.
right?
Yep.
It's eternal. It's one of their doctrinal lines is systems. They are forever. One, they love responsibles to build institutions, particularly centralized institutions, because now they have a single attack vector. Right now, all they have to do is take a generation, 2 or 3 generations, and
Infiltrating
focus
it.
heavily on infiltrating that. And it's not always at the top. That's not where the real power is. That person's a figurehead that comes and goes. It's all the middle level management that nobody knows about. Nobody knows the name of. There's no recourse. There's no that motherfucker, right? Meanwhile, that malevolence, that resentment is impacting millions of lives. So, in the in the English common law system, the one institution you must corrupt is the law itself. And boy, doesn't that look familiar at every level. District attorneys, prosecutors, sheriffs, chiefs of police, mayors, frickin' the FBI, the DEA, right? Federal judges who aren't even American, federal judges who are just writing, FISA warrants left and right for probably still in their underwear with some Ukrainian call boys on. Well, okay, maybe that's a little bit too far, but
I don't need any evidence. No, it does make sense. I mean, of all the shit I've forgotten from college, one of the things I just remember about molecular biology was like the worst place to have oxidative stress and damage was in whatever protein mechanism was building mitochondria, which powered the antioxidant mechanisms. So if you damage that, then the thing would produce damaged mitochondria, which would produce damaged or the ability for more oxidative stress and a feedback. And
Yeah.
it's actually more complex than, you know, the simplest thing for DNA replication, and this completely ignores the idea of, the checks and balances which happen in the cell. But the most broad term is they would always say, okay, you take a piece of paper and you make a copy, and the 100th copy you accidentally move it a little bit to the side. Well, now every copy after that has that, and or if you draw a pen on it, now okay. What was explained to me was, now imagine if the thing that it was copying was the code that it used to copy. So now every time you actually made a mistake, it was, well, now it made a mistake in reproducing something with multiple. Yeah, if you were to attack one thing, you'd attack the law. That's
This
the
is how viruses work,
yeah,
right? Viruses go in, they'll change a little bit of your RNA code or a little bit of your DNA code. And then every time the cell is doing, excuse me, not the whole cell, but subsets of the cell's component pieces are replicating themselves. Well, they're replicating the virus.
yeah, yeah. No, it's very intelligent and it's energetically efficient.
Yeah. And it only goes in one direction, right? Like,
Yeah.
entropy's arrow is definitely on the side of the virus because of how many replication cycles it goes through, and there's nothing pushing back in the other direction.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and we'd ask people, well, how does this stop? And it'd be like, well, it's how if you don't die of any illness, you die of old age, which is actually you die of breathing. So it's like if nothing else gets you, breathing gets you, which in a way it means you won. If you got to that age, it means you won. But it's like, well, how does it stop? Oh, it
Violence.
doesn't. This thing's over. This thing
No,
dies. Well, how does it
it's
stop? Well, they had a kid and that thing went forward.
well, how does it stop? Violence. The
Yeah.
immune system kicks in and kills some motherfuckers in great numbers.
Except for this oxidative level stress, because the very immune system is now being damaged. And it
Well,
gives,
what's causing? Well, again, though, it's still violence, right? Because then you get apoptosis, and
yeah,
so what happens is
yeah,
you get
suicidal.
you get system
Yeah.
that tells the cells to die back because they're replicating wrong, right? and the way in which the immune system is never on a single vector, right? It's always multiple vectors, multiple levels at the same time. And Dominic, exactly what you're saying. In the English speaking world, every 400 years, our immune system has to go through a major violent upheaval to reset itself. And what comes out of that every time is a much more, we very much to what you said, we don't rewrite everything. We don't just whole cloth. That's how you wind up with France, right? What we do is we greatly update, what we have, the code in the system we have. We fix the patches, right? To use computers or the gaming world, right? We patch to the conversation you guys had the other Saturday when I ghosted you, a family thing I had to do for the teen daughter who was leaving for the holiday.
It's fine. I thought you were dead.
Oh, well, probably would have been prefer. No, actually, that's not true. My daughter and her friends are fun.
Yeah, that's why I was like, Donnie, can you check on him? I just want to make sure he's alive.
I had a house full of teens,
All
and
good.
you do not let them run around unsupervised,
Correct.
not at their age,
Correct.
right? um, just the same as you probably shouldn't let us run around at our age unsupervised.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, we just have better firearm control. It's always violence. Tommy, to what you're saying, it's always violence. It's either the system auto corrects itself by causing dieback, right? Which is, again, also in the Eternal War. When I wrote the Eternal War, I was thinking about, the immune system, but not just the immune system, our own highly advanced immune system, but how did immune systems function in biomasses that, that weren't in bodies and didn't have a set, complex immune system? How did they work then, a billion years ago, 2 billion years ago, 2.5 billion years ago, et cetera? So it's always violent. It's certain types of cells go and attack other types of cells. And or at the same time, a signal sent back to certain cells, hey, you need to die back because you are corrupting the whole system. It's called apoptosis. And the cell dies back. It's reabsorbed, right? Materials reabsorbed. You got to deal with the toxin bloom at that point. Sometimes you get a secondary or tertiary kinds of illnesses. You get cytokine storms, all these kinds of complex cascading things. But it's the only way to get you back to the base code that doesn't have the corruption. It's the same concept behind chemo and radiation therapy, even though, I'm not going to get into the whole cancer treatment thing, but, most of that isn't actually to make you feel better, make you healthier. It's to give you a higher quality of life, but to kill you more suddenly, right? At least that's what it seems to be. So, last time we went through this, it was the English Civil War, which finally culminated 40 years later in the Inglorious Revolution, which really didn't start wrapping up fully with the Acts of Settlement 1701, the Acts of Union, which were then done by the enemy to undo the Acts of Settlement, not undo them because they couldn't undo them, so they worked around them. And so, unfortunately, roughly 400 years ago, 320 all the way back to 400 years ago, the parasites, Second Rome, won that go. And now they're moving to wipe us out completely. And we have to win this go. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, a whole lot of diseased cells and a whole lot of parasitic invader cells have to go. Okay, well, it's been 400 years. How do we know which cells stay, people, and which cells don't?
Depends on how you tag them, right? That's what the immune system does. Which cells get tagged and which ones don't, and do you have an updated antibody list of what you're facing?
Correct. Can the immune system actually recognize the complexity of the new information space given its original code? Right.
Well, and self from non-self, right?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Like that's part of the update too.
Correct. Right. So so in America, there's what's called old stock Americans. You guys familiar with that? It's families that arrived here before the 1750s, right? Okay, yeah. From 1607. Actually, the first Englishmen got here in the late 1400s, right? Exploratory. And one of the first actual journeys here, again, I did a lot of research this morning for a couple hours, got up before 4, just because all this was in my mind. That's old stock Americans. Old stock Americans are the original families. And about 20% of them are actually still around. 99.9% of them all on the mother's line. Back to the matriarch conversations we've been having and the work I'm doing, right? Like Clint Eastwood is from, I think, the second oldest family to arrive in the Americas, still extant, really? All through his mother's side.
No kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. Which explains Clint a bit more, right?
Did you know, and I didn't know this, yes, in the earliest official form, Harvard existed in 1604.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is so entrenched. That is so, yeah, that just always kind of blows my mind. 172 years before 1776.
Yeah.
That it's
There's another one, where I went to school, the Vermont Military Institute. Also very old, the original military institute in the United States. And then it wasn't one of the academies, it was Vermont.
And then Exeter Academy. Where I was raised, I think, the first couple of years in Exeter, New Hampshire, or right next. Yeah. Exeter Academy, I think.
Yeah. It's a good private school.
Yeah, that's like the oldest power.
Yeah. Well, and then you got Choate and you got some of the other, very old prep schools out there, right? But, what is old stock American? Okay, well, in most statements, it's the families from 1750, 1750 and before, but there's a whole lot of things that happen in this country, and there's a whole lot of families that contribute a whole lot. Okay, well, let's look at some other ethnic groups. Like, let's look at the Filipinos. When do you think the first Filipinos arrived in the United States?
Probably 18. I'm going to say 1700s with the Spanish.
1597.
Right.
Morro Bay in California.
All right.
Late 1500s in Louisiana. Right? Louisiana territory. In fact, one of the oldest Filipino populations outside of the Philippines is actually in Louisiana. right? Second largest Filipino population outside the Philippines is in Daly City, California. It's very foggy. This little joke, and I can say it because I was married to a Filipino. I got to have a Filipino kid, right? But what's all the fog from? You guys heard this one? It's all the rice cookers.
I was gonna say smoke signals, but
It's all the rice cookers. That's Native Americans. That's not
yeah,
Filipinos.
let me just be broadly racist.
Yeah, well, it's not a lot of smoke signals in the wet jungle. And first Italians arrived here. Well, first Italians arrived here in 1490 something, 1495, 1496, because the English chartered an Italian group to come and plot the eastern coast, the eastern seaboard. John Cabot. So tomorrow I'll do a more extensive piece than I did this morning. But again, what I'm getting at is, okay, and then the first blacks arrived here before slavery. They were working on ships. First Chinese got here in the 1500s.
Really?
They were working on ships. First Malays. I didn't know this, but the first Malays came and fought here, if I remember correctly, in the Revolutionary War on the ships because they'd been in the British Navy, right? The Chinese had been in the British Navy. The Malays had been in the British Navy and the Portuguese and the Spanish navies. Right, that's how the Filipinos got here, was the Spanish Navy. Right, so all right, Germans. I think the second person to step down in Jamestown was a German. He was a blacksmith, if I remember correctly.
I was going to say probably a toolmaker or a
toolmaker.
Yep.
Right. So this whole concept and idea that it's all just white, where they're going. I saw it today. I'm seeing it more and more and more. They're pushing hard ethno-white. That's the pattern, and they're pushing. And unfortunately, I don't know that JD Vance and others aren't involved because he sure keeps getting pushed around in it. At least they're picking up his messaging. And then I'm seeing blatantly Nazi, quite up Nazi. This isn't hyperbole, straight up Nazi regalia and symbols and uniforms and everything pop up. Okay, well, yes, this is going to go ethnic. We've been forced to that as the only way for the immune system to work, right? For the cells to be able to recognize one another. But we cannot go the way we went, the way the Germans went, and much of Europe, by the way, who also participated with the Germans. We can't go that way or we will destroy ourselves. We'll destroy ourselves, one, in a fight with, against numbers and odds that we can't win, just like the Germans lost 7 million men with the best armed, best trained, best capable military in the history of the world. A military we couldn't equate to today, that we couldn't field, right? And the only reason that the Germans were actually beaten at all is we out industrially produced them, right? We put out something like 12 Sherman tanks to every one Tiger tank. That Tiger tank could take out 11 Sherman tanks, but the 12th.
Yeah. So we had a P-51 Mustang, I think every 65 minutes.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I heard a great stat. It was the total tonnage. If you look at total war material tonnage divided by soldier, the Japanese soldier had under 100 pounds of total industrial production, and the average American GI was measured in multiple tons.
Yeah. I mean, we were putting out, 2 Liberty ships a day by the end of the war.
Then we have, I think there's 100 aircraft carriers.
100 aircraft, yeah.
That is so... It's still impossible. Like Garrett Graff says, war material production that still today boggles the mind.
It's unreal, right? And it didn't destroy the economy. It didn't break the country. We didn't run out of resources. But here's the problem. We're on the German side of it now.
Yes.
Only worse. None of our technology works. Yeah. If it did, the Ukrainians would have won the damn war by now.
Well, implying that we want them to win.
Well, yeah, but unfortunately, factions.
But in terms of just like, military, let's just call it what it is in terms of like, hey, they maybe don't want them to end it tonight.
I don't think they want them to win at all. Actually, this is what got me up this morning.
That's my point is I think if we really wanted to, we could probably help them. a lot more. I don't think we want, regardless of whether or not we can. I'm not gonna just stay in my own echo chamber of like American
Yeah,
exceptionalism.
yeah,
All that
yeah.
aside, let's say we really do have whatever the bee's knees. I don't think we want them to win. I think
I
we like this.
I think Rome, second Rome, Europe, the EU, is trying to wipe out Eastern Roman Empire by killing Slavs who are Orthodox. And to them, to the Romans, the Orthodox are Eastern Roman Empire. That's Byzantium. And they've been at war with them since the 300s, right? So I'm writing about this. It's going into chapter 43, and it's conversations Dominick and I've had, et cetera. It's what's been keeping me up the last several days, really thinking this out. But it also getting me back to this, okay, what's old stock? What is old stock American? Right. And the more I look at it, the more I dig and the more I dive, it's like, yeah, the English specifically, and then the Scots and the Irish, but really the English specifically have been the dominant ethnic group here for the entire history of the English speaking peoples in these lands. Now, that's been intentionally eroded heavily since the 1960s, but we're still the dominant ethnic group, right? Single ethnic group. Why? Well, because we're an English civilization. This whole country, the Constitution of the United States, that's the other thing Rome's been doing on this bloody psyop. We are the second Rome. No, the Vatican's the second Rome. The EU is the second Rome. We are the complete refutation of Rome. If you look at the American Constitution, it is a codification of the informal English Constitution, almost line for line in many cases. Right, it takes all the different acts and edicts and rules and puts it together into a single document. The English Bill of, or the American Bill of Rights is I don't remember what it is, 1698 or 1689, whatever. I can't remember the exact year, but it is almost the exact English Bill of Rights from a century before. Only, with some minor changes and some additions, improvements, Dominick, like you said. English common law. Well, we took that whole sack, right? Whole cloth. We didn't change anything. We just carried on what was already there in the colonial courts and the crown courts. And now the crown courts became the Supreme Courts and the states courts, et cetera. Right? And the colonial courts became the states courts. The crown courts became the federal courts. We just carried on. We are English civilization at its greatest expression. Now we're going to have to fight that out again. Okay, well, that's the core. That's the base. But okay, now who's the stock though, right? The humans, because it takes humans. And you can't just interchange them. That's the whole lie of Okay, so what is an old stock? So what are the three great conflicts that defined the American people?
Revolutionary, civil, World War II.
Yeah. Yeah. If you look not just at the wars themselves, but all the things that were happening around it, the changes, the societal changes, the industrial economic changes, the cultural, the updates to the Constitution, the updates to, rights and privileges and all of the, the balance of power between government and people and all of that as well. If you look closely, all three of those were fights over whether our English way of life was worth keeping and saving and fighting all out for or not.
They also were at the end of each 80-year secular cycle. Yeah.
Saculum.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And by the way, the leaders from each of those are on Mount Rushmore. Right. Or at least the first two, right? You get Lincoln, you get Washington. It's had Mount Rushmore been made 50 years later, probably FDR would be on there. Not that he should be, but he would.
He was a fascist. And he invented fascism here, and now we have to undo fascism in the United States.
Okay, so Ian, let's just rewind the clock like 2 or 3 minutes when you were talking about how everyone's saying that, or that some people are saying that America is the second Rome. One of my hobby horses is coins. And there's this very interesting, if you look at the history of American coinage, up until the first progressive era, which is a name I hate, but that's what it is. You had nothing but mythological figures on our coinage. and natural objects, buffalo, etc. As soon as the progressive era starts, you start getting dead presidents on our coins.
Yeah, wasn't it the Apollo? Was it Apollo dime, the Mercury dime?
Yep, Mercury
Yeah,
dime. Yep,
Buffalo nickel.
Buffalo nickel, Indian head penny, walking
Yeah,
Lady Liberties, all of that. And then the very first coin you get in that era is the Lincoln penny, with a neoclassical, the Lincoln Memorial on the
hmm
back. When you go to the Lincoln Memorial and there's all the words carved on the wall, the first line is "In this temple." It lets you know kind of like the people who built that. And then the thing that I like is on the back of the modern dime, there is that torch looking
yeah,
thing. That is called the fasci, which is
yeah.
what the Roman lictors would march with. And so, it's like, yeah, people have been trying to bring some form of fascism, centralized control in for quite a while. And there's a saying that I like. It says, when there's mythological figures on your coinage, you can sleep easy. When there's dead presidents on your coinage, you probably want to get a second passport. And when there's living presidents on your coins, it's time to leave. Because that's when you know that you've crossed over into some type of full, cult of personality.
Fascist. Yeah, you're in a fascist regime.
Yeah.
No, this is exactly. So this is the real fight. Who are we fighting?
Sorry, Far Cry,
Yeah, yeah.
Far Cry 4. The dictator's like, "Do you recognize me?" And he goes, "Give me your wallet." And starts pulling out all the bills and goes like,
This face.
"Yeah." Sorry, keep going. Yeah.
No, no, no. So yeah, when you have dead emperors on your coinage and the coinage has been debased that much, you're at the fall of Rome.
Mhm.
Sure.
So our enemy has been Rome this whole time. So that, not to digress, get back to the old stock here, but FDR's job started with Woodrow Wilson was to re-embed Rome into the English system. And you had to re-embed it into America because we were we were the up and coming empire, the up and coming Eastern Empire to the Britain's Western Empire, right? To London's Western Empire. They're just following the exact pattern of Byzantium out of Rome. I've written on this before. Once you see it in those terms, right? Once you see the war and how the Romans are fighting, how the Romans fought, and you look at how this is all, no, if you read the founding fathers, they were not, now, yes, there was a big divide in the founding fathers, and there were some that, thought we needed a more Roman Republic kind of system and structure. But that's not what we ended up with. What we ended up with was the English system, right? That's the U.S. Constitution. The American Constitution comes directly out of English Constitution. It's just a codification in a single document of a whole bunch of different living documents in the English constitutional system, which Graham Moore talks extraordinarily well about, right? Way better than I could ever articulate. And he can quote off and cite and things I can't do, right? So, okay. We are now going to have to fight in blood, sadly. We are now going to have to fight to restore our Englishness from this embedded Romanism. We're going to have to. Okay. Well, who's going to do that fighting? Right? It isn't the North versus South anymore. It's not red versus blue, because none of those labels mean anything. That's why I wrote the book, The Eternal War, because none of the old labels work anymore. There's no value in them unless you get a hard on over arguments from ludicrous point that doesn't mean shit. Right? So, okay, who's the old stock? For me, when I look at old stock and I talk to people, it's people whose ancestors, and I don't mean, again, they're ethnic peoples. I mean, their family members fought in the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, or World War II. And there's a smattering of some other peoples that have became Americans, right? Englishmen, but Americans, which all of us are Englishmen down underneath. But they became Englishmen, Americans, having fought in the Korean War, having fought in Vietnam, and having fought in the GWOT, some of them. Right? But the real stock of the Americas, if the immune system's looking and saying, right, how do we make a determination of who stays and who goes? Well, one, that old stock is not as simple as just white people. We've had brown people fight in every war we've ever had. We've had Chinese and Asians fight in every war we've ever had, going back to the very beginning. And we've had Native Americans fighting in every war we've ever had, right back to the French, the Indian Wars, not just the French wars, but, the frontier wars. So, and really, again, blacks, something like 300,000 blacks fought in the Civil War.
I didn't know that.
300,000 on the side, and on both sides, by the way, right? Because they fought both on the South and on the Union side, right? Because some of them, again, that's another thing, right? Our whole story of ourselves is far more complicated as a people. But there's one common thread amongst all of that binds this disparate group of ethnicities together. We all, when it comes to the utmost, those who are true Englishmen down underneath, no matter their ethnicity, no matter their race, no matter their religion, any of that comes together and fights to keep it. Not to tear it down, not to break it apart, not to, put something else in place. No, these families, these people have come together and they've stood with others who, by the way, we might have been fighting with last week, right? Because every group's got their own beefs. Every tribe's got their own beefs with other tribes. We're always fighting. But when it comes down to it, right, and it's really about, holy cow, we're all in danger. And this, you want another prime example of this? This is the history of the Irish writ large. The Irish clans and Scottish clans have warred with one another for for thousands of years. But every time some outside, well, unfortunately, you get traitors and you get betrayers, et cetera. But predominantly, the reason it took so long and took so much bloodiness and really ended up taking Cromwell just doing straight up genocide to beat the Irish. And nobody beat the Scots ultimately, right? You had to win the Scots over, the Acts of Union, et cetera, right? Why? Because when somebody from the outside came and tried to take a fight and try to overwhelm and control the Irish all came together and said, we'll go back and fight each other tomorrow. But today, we're fighting these motherfuckers, right? We're Irish, or we're Western Irish, or we're Northern Irish, or we're Eastern Irish. It's amazing how much the Irish can define themselves in that small little island.
I think Carl Sagan, he had that quote, right? If aliens came and looked at us, we would be as similar as, or they would look at our differentiations the same way we would look at, be like, yeah, look at that nice lawn. And one blade of grass is like, well, we're this species of grass. You'd be like, the fuck? No, it's grass.
Yeah.
No, you'd have 100 different factions.
Or the microbes in the soil.
I'm not that type of grass. I'm like, you like your grass. Shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we do have some grass that kills other grass. We do have grass that destroys the soil. Right. So, in what's ahead now, the only thing that we can look to as how do we define who should be and who should not be, and more importantly, who gets to make that decision, it has to come down to the old stock families. And those old stock, okay, what defines that? Your family has direct family members that fought in one or more of those wars. And we'll make acceptance and understanding, somebody whose families fought in those wars. And you're going to find that a lot of the people who fought in one of those wars, their families fought in all of them and others. Those ones get to decide amongst the Vietnam, Korean, and GWOT eras, which new peoples get added as old stock.
How do you technically do that, though? I mean, is this like a broad idea, or is it like you legitimately have to make a council of old family? Like in terms of just like that, how do you flesh it out? Or do you mean this is just like a general idea?
Okay, so Tommy, that's a great question.
Yeah, there's two ways to go. There's natives rule, or it's like we literally names genomic sequences. You get that gets very intricate very quickly.
Well, here's the thing. We either work this out at the local level, where the local families figure out who's old stock families and who has more say in that community than others. And oh, by the way, some old stock families have just become decrepit and
I was gonna say,
useless.
how many old stock families are just full of fucking retards versus you have some guy who, second generation, but he and his dad served in, multiple war. I'd be like, that guy's more pro-American
So
than,
this is what it's going to come down to. When it gets to these times, who's making the choice of who lives and dies? Or who stays and who's forced out? It's the warriors. It's the fighters. So to your point, right, again, we've been through 25, 27 years of nonstop war in the GWAT, which, by the way, the GWAT never ended, folks. We just stopped labeling that. Same thing with the Patriot Act. We just called it something else, right? So it's your current, Vietnam forward era fighters that, get to say today who's healthy old stock and who's not.
But that's clearly not how we're structured, though. Like, I understand everything you're saying, but I mean, like, that doesn't actually hold any. I'm not saying it should or shouldn't. That doesn't actually hold any bearing. It's like we have.
That's not true. This was the way it was 25, 30 years ago.
All right.
When you looked at, and even today, it's how it is outside of the bullshit made up information space. If you look at people and the respect that's given to people, organic, natural status, respect, who gets that when they walk in the room? It's not the guy with the Lamborghini. This guy's got 3 deployments in freaking Afghanistan and Iraq.
Sure.
On the front lines, not in support. Not to take away from support guys, we need them, and they serve a very important role, and many of them got hemmed up too. It's not what I'm saying exactly, but it's the special operations guy or the infantry grunt. Like we had an E4 on the infantry platoon assigned to us in Afghanistan in 2012. E4. He already had 3 years of combat. He was one of the highest decorated guys in our Special Forces ODA, in the infantry platoon. Now, yes, I think he'd been busted in rank twice, right? But we all respected that guy. Young man. He was like 22 years old. More combat experience than 90% of the people in that part of Afghanistan. So not very long ago, in my lifetime, the guys that were respected, the people that were respected, the ones whose families had fought and they themselves had fought in World War II, in Korea, and Vietnam. We even still had, I'm old enough that when I was young, we even still had some World War I folks around, like my grandfather, right? And those were the guys that were respected. Now, to your point, Tommy, they played a bigger role in local society than they do today. They were a larger percentage of the population. They were about 20%. Now it's down below 4%. And I think now actually it's down below 2%.
EM, to go back to our earlier Shakespeare conversation, at the end of World War II, I once saw this wonderful graphic, and it had all of the famous movie stars from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. People you would know,
Yeah.
Jimmy Stewart, Ernest Borgnine, right? Like Lee Marvin, all these guys.
Yeah.
And their war records were at the bottom of the picture, right?
Yes.
And so many of those movie stars, television stars of that era were legit war heroes,
Yes.
right? Like at the height of Hollywood. And
Yes.
One of the things that I find very interesting in the cultural moment that we're in right now is that, you have like the terminalist guys, there are some GWAT guys who have made some inroads into Hollywood and popular culture, but nothing like post World War II. And I would even argue nothing like post Vietnam, right? Like we have yet to get our GWAT version of Platoon. We have yet to get our GWAT version of Apocalypse Now. We have yet to, that like those stories just haven't yet been told. And
because we don't have, aside from the actors, even more than actors, look at the playwrights and the screenwriters and how many of those were veterans.
Oh, yeah, tons of them.
And they've been like completely excluded from anything to do with writing anywhere, TV, movies, plays.
Oh, I'm
Like,
well aware.
right? No, I'm sure this is your world, right? So I want to let's use this, right? Because this is something I've been doing some research on, right? Look at the number of screenwriters and playwrights and literary figures who were World War One veterans.
Yeah.
And when I say World War One, I mean like they survived the trenches of World War One.
Right.
Right.
Tolkien comes immediately to mind.
Tolkien, there's a whole number of them. Like some of the greatest playwrights, theater, because before the movie theaters really came along, and before TV actually came along, the playwrights were the ones doing the most cutting edge stuff. Look at the number of playwrights who were direct World War One veterans.
Sure. Now
look at them today. Today it's almost zero. In fact, I don't know of a single one. Right. Yeah. Vietnam, we already saw, World War II, we saw that number cut by about a third. Vietnam, we saw it cut by another, a half. And now they're almost writers on the writer side, because they're the ones, who do that. And oh, by the way, it's not just the visual arts. Look at how many songwriters and original music composers were veterans. Like Chris Christopherson and, comes to mind from Vietnam and others. But a lot of the music people as well, the writing side, well, not maybe necessarily was the singers, but the one or the band leaders, but the ones who actually wrote the songs were disproportionately, well, not disproportionately, but substantively veterans from war. Now, a lot of those guys were not combat related. And the other piece was you also had, because we had a larger percentage of the population who served in military conflicts or just in uniform in general, you had a large number of veterans in everything.
Absolutely.
And they were a calming, regulating, they were a calming, mellowing voice, because they had seen conflict, real conflict, and where things really go if the little tit for tat isn't, dealt with immediately and quickly, it turns into something nasty and mean and violent.
Yeah, well, right. That's the great lie that we've been told, is that a bunch of men capable of violence, the more men in the room capable of violence, the more likely violence is. The exact opposite is true.
The exact opposite.
100% exact opposite. And,
that's just the most perfect example, irrefutable, you can't skew an argument, is nuclear weapons. What happens when one guy has them? What happens when everyone has them?
Yeah, well, when one guy had them, he used them. When everybody has them, nobody's used them.
Everyone fucks off. It's
right.
Yeah.
You want to, Dominick and
from there,
Tommy, what you're saying, you want a perfect example. You get a room full of 12 Green Berets, all of them with multiple combat rotations, some of them with seen some real shit. And then my little 3-year-old daughter walks in the room. Everybody's the softest, sweetest, nicest, kindest, lovingest person you would ever meet in your entire life. And it was the same way one of their kids walked in, right? There was like a switch. And your father, your dad, you're all uncles. And, this is what it's all about. And it didn't matter if, we were fighting in the team room right before they walked in. I mean, we could have been having a fist fight in the team room.
Sure.
Right? So back to the old stock, right? We're going to have to figure this out. We're going to have to work it out. We're going to have to figure this out real quick. And I think I think that's the way that, I've looked at every other kind of thing that there is. It's the only thing that works. It's the only thing that makes sense. Right? Now, does that mean that you yourself served? No. That's better. But at least a direct family member, a father, an uncle, grandfather did. And you stayed involved in the American cause, the English civilization, keeping the flame of the English civilization as American. Right? Now we got another problem. Well, not another problem, but another difficulty, which is what they've been counting on. Okay, well, from the very beginning, we've been a multi-ethnic people, but we don't all get along, and we are not all the same. And some of us genuinely just don't like each other for all kinds of reasons, right? I'm young enough to remember, black boys didn't go into the Italian neighborhood. Italians didn't go into black guys' neighborhoods. Nobody goes into black neighborhoods anymore, unfortunately, at least in the inner cities, right? Um, and if they do, they're normally black and they get killed by other blacks, right? Wonderful, wonderful output of multiracialism and multiculturalism and welfare state. But this is a conversation Clay and I had. I think we touched on it, Tommy, with you last time. Is these different ethnic groups, all of which have old stock families, have got to start cleaning up their own communities. Because whites can't clean up the black community. We don't know it. We don't understand it. The dynamics are fundamentally different. The cultural adaptations to the English civilization are fundamentally different than ours. It's the same as me as an Englishman and you, Tommy, as an Irishman. We're closer, but we got beefs that go back over 1,000 freaking years, right? My Scottish half and my English half have serious beefs with one another that shaped the entire English civilization, the fight between the Scots and the English, the Scots and the Romans, right? So with the mixing of you guys too, right? Good old William Wallace, right? Like the best thing I want to see, guys, and I'll pause here and then I'll jump in there, please, is I want to see this all go down where they think we're going to go out and slaughter each other on an ethnic basis. And they got the black guys on their side. And the battle's about to start. The black guys walk across the field like they're going to attack us. They just walk over and we all hug, talk about shit, hey, oh man, yeah, I remember your father, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. And we all moon the fucking English using the William Wallace reference, sure, right?
Yeah.
When the Irish walked across there. That's what we got to get to, right? Is that our different ethnic groups who have old stock families and who are old stock Americans need to clean up their house and police their house. And they need to look to the rot and the threats within their own house, right? Within their own tribe. Let's just call it that. Same as we got to do, right? Because most of the enemies that we're up against are actually in the white people's camp, at least the ones behind all of this.
And also,
yeah. Go ahead, Tommy.
No, I get nothing important to add.
So, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
When you mention, that we're starting to see a lot of, very direct, undeniable Nazi imagery being used against us, who do you think that is directly coming from the continental Europeans, or do you think that it is like it's powerful imagery that's being used because it's powerful imagery?
Nope. It's being done on purpose. Why? Because the English peoples are Germanic. Rome destroyed Germany twice, and they used us to do it. It's the same thing. Now they're setting us up to be the Germans that we are to them because they're Romans. And what we have to understand is that history never ends. Fukuyama was a retard. He wrote very well. He was well-meaning, maybe. But Fukuyama's a retard. History never ends. Who are the one people?
I always do draw on that when my own thoughts are like, oh, AI is going to take over, or nanotechnology is going to take over, or the World Economic Forum is going to take over, or vaccine passports. I'm always like, provably, when anyone makes that claim that it's what are the scientists in the early 1900s, we're basically finished figuring out the universe. We just need to find out the measurements now. You look back at them and they're like eating top hats, like riding Model Ts. You're like, y'all are fucking retarded. I always go back for better or worse. It's never ending.
Yeah, no, it never ends. What is the one peoples the Romans could never conquer? The Germanic peoples.
No.
The closest they got was using Charlemagne, a Frank, to slaughter and force convert Northwest Germanic peoples. Like Verdun is one of the deepest blood memories in my people, where 4,000 fucking Saxons were slaughtered to force convert in one just slaughter, tied up and throat slit. right? We are at war with Rome. We are the direct refutation of Rome. Rome is the enemy. Who is the staunchest enemy of the Roman peoples? The Germanics, right? Now, Germanics are different than Gauls, right? The Gauls and the French are not Franks. Some are in the north, but they're mostly Gallic peoples. Gallic peoples are conquered. Germanic peoples were not. And there's only one group of peoples who wiped out as many Roman legions as the Germans, and that was Hannibal. They hate us. They fear us. That's why they constantly keep the Germanic peoples and the Russian peoples in conflict with one another. So what they're trying to do now, Germany's been pretty much wiped out. Germany's overrun by Turks and everybody else. All of their assets were sold off in World War II or stolen or taken. And we killed 7 million of their young men. They've never recovered from that. Okay, well, what's the next great community of Germanic peoples? It's being done on purpose, right? And how did they do it? They use communism and Marxism to drive the German people into a single identity, right? Germany wasn't a state until the late 1800s. Mm-hmm. Germany was 30, 50 principalities, dukedoms, free states, free cities, etc.
Bismarck.
It was a disparate group and community of peoples who had very unique identities that went back thousands of years.
70s, wasn't somewhere in all kind of buttoned it up.
Yeah, the Prussians, Prussian system. Okay, well then, what did the Romans do? They went in there and collapsed. They created the situations where World War I drove them all into World War I, slaughtered them off there, and then flooded the country with Marxists who went just exactly what's been happening in the United States and the United Kingdom the last 20 years, right down, heavily oriented around the sexual confusion and all, identity confusion and all this other stuff. That created disgust mechanisms in the people. They assassinated, any of the great thinkers, any of the great leaders, Charlie Kirk. And then they forced the people into a position, a situation where they thought of themselves as one identity, German. And then they loosed them, in a great slaughter, an ethnic slaughter. Well, who got defeated? We didn't defeat the Nazis. We brought that. If we had defeated the Nazis, we would have done a Verdun-like event where we just slit the throats of probably 40,000 Nazi leaders. We didn't. We brought them all into our governments, into our industries. So we didn't defeat the Nazis. We defeated the Germans on behalf of the Romans. We are on the block.
Same with the top biologist at Unit 731, Shiro Ishii.
Correct.
Me and our friend Stoli, we always joke about what Operation Paperclip, and then I guess whatever the unofficial term was for bringing the Japanese back was the takeaway from that is don't commit war crimes. But if you're going to commit the most, you'll get a position at the country that took over you. All the guys just under you, they'll get hung. If you're gonna be a Nazi, hey man, you better build the best rocket because you'll come back. Just below that though, executed, show trial.
It's why very much, Tommy, you say that tongue in cheek, but it's not.
No, I'm not. It's provable history.
It's just true.
It's a humorous take on a dark thing, but the reality is the top guy, Shiro Ishii. I only know him because he was the worst guy. He's the one that set it up. All the guys under him, hang them, whatever.
So we all look at Mengele, but Mengele's boss's boss, I can't remember the gentleman's name, Major General, 2-star, I think, 2 or 3-star general. But the head of Nazi medicine was brought in to work with General Armstrong at Air Force Medical, which is the entire medical industry today. It's where it comes out of, Air Force Medical.
That's where we got a bunch of the Luftwaffe guys because they were doing the high altitude experiments and
But they were also leading all the experiments in the camps.
Well, Shiro
Ishii
is the one that they did it against from the Bataan Death March. Yeah, literally against GIs. It was a little. It's not okay, but it was a little more abstract with the Nazis because you're like, they were doing it to the Jews, but they weren't doing it to our boys. Shiro Ishii was literally getting these guys These
Yes.
18-year-old white American dudes who were part of the island hopping campaign experimenting on them, and Shiro Ishii was brought back to the United States.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
also experimenting on the British out of Burma. They were capturing
Yeah.
Burma and all over, right? That's the bridge over the River Kwai.
Yeah. So it's like
So
we brought back Nazis that did experiments on Jews. Like, bro, we brought back guys that did experiments on our
on our people,
combatants.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
And oh, by the way, it wasn't just the Jews. How many gypsies they killed? How many
Gypsy, Joma,
Poles?
Roma. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Right?
But my point is in
Yeah,
general is
yeah,
like it's appalling when you think about that. It's like, yeah, dude, we went even darker. We
yeah. Oh,
brought
yeah, yeah,
back
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
guys
yeah.
who were operating on our guys, and the guys that the Americans that brought them back knew that.
Correct.
There's actually a quote. I don't think it's Curtis LeMay, but it's some other guy that it was like 1946, and he was like yelling at whoever, Truman. He was like, "Stop beating a dead Nazi horse." Like less than a year later, he was like, "It's over. Bring him back." And not like a hippie. It was like a two-star general or something. It was like, "Yeah, bring him back. We're good." You're like, so that's when people are like, can you believe we're giving the Taliban money? I'm like, yes.
Yes.
Also, why we armed them on purpose,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Can you believe we do that? And then it just pans to the picture of Curtis LeMay, JFK, and Werner von Braun all wearing aviators together. Like, yeah, man, I can believe that. Unfortunately, I can really with no,
just
yeah.
for your audience, Werner von Braun's labs in Germany killed somewhere
Nordhausen.
between 30 and 50,000 people
Yeah,
in slave labor.
Nordhausen. Yeah, the
It wasn't
slave.
like he was just an engineer, didn't quite know. No,
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 he
no, no,
ran the
no.
places that it was not only a labor camp, it was a labor camp underground so that we couldn't bomb
Correct.
them. And
Correct.
what they would do is they would hang the slowest 10 workers every single day. Von Braun wasn't some detached, like,
No. Egghead.
scientist who was,
Yeah.
gun to his head. No, he knew what he was doing, man. He had one of the earliest SS numbers. Like, there is no argument. There's no like, you can twist it any way you want, but I mean, yeah, no, no. We'll bring them all
So
back. We
one
don't
has to
care.
wonder about Silicon Valley, and I have for decades, having lived and worked there. Silicon Valley comes straight out of all of that work and research and funding.
How so?
Where were the first semiconductors developed,
Yeah, well, I guess
designed, concepts? Look at the
IBM, right? The first things is they would go in, they would use the Hollerith cards and even that people are like, well, it was a corporation during World War II. Like, no, 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 no. They had technicians that went into the camps. I mean, IG Farben helped. Part of Auschwitz's original name had IG Farben in it, and they were like, "Hey, can you remove that just in case?"
oh, look at there's a great documentary to that, Tommy, on Germany's top leading corporations today and their direct, Nazi roots, and not
Yeah.
just theirs, Austrian and
I'll
even
give I'll
Swiss.
give I'll give I'll give Krupp Arms a pass because they started in the 1600s.
Yeah, well,
There's a great book about it called Arms of Krupp.
yeah, no, the
Not
Crips,
great. That's a great book.
Have you read
Crips
it?
are
Yeah, I've read
interesting.
it.
Yeah, I read it a
Yeah,
couple of years. I just wanted to read it for no other reason than it was the longest audiobook I could find. I was like, I want to prove myself I wasn't retarded. Like, you know.
no, that's an old family, old family. Um, look at the Warburgs in who own Sweden. Look at their collaborations and industrialization and everything they did with Nazis, right? So World War II, the Nazis won. Patton was wrong, by the way. I posted this morning, right? Because people keep saying, well, Patton said we fought on the wrong side. No, Patton, you were wrong. You didn't defeat the Nazis. You defeated the Germans.
Yeah, no, he was that's what people he said we a noble peoples. He was talking about the Germanic people. He was talking about
Yes.
the average.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that-
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, and he was right. And
Yes.
that we did do that. We killed our own stock.
Our own people.
Yes, like if you're gonna I get something like Japan or Korea. It's like, yeah, at the most basic. It's like, okay, they kind of don't look like you. I'm not saying it's justified, but I'm like, all right. Like, okay, maybe you're detached from it, man. Like the guys invading Germany looked like the Germans, right? It's
And we're Germanic,
yeah,
right? The English are Germanic peoples. The Scandinavians are Germanic peoples, right? Our language is Old Frisian, a German language. I want to let's touch on the Japanese for a second here. When do you think the first Japanese arrived in America, North America?
Well, everything in this episode has taught me that I don't know, so I'm gonna take a guess that.
Early 1600s.
All right, yeah, I was gonna say nothing
They
that
were
I
also on
imagine.
ships in the Pacific fleets, right? And we put those fuckers in camps with the
Mhm.
argument, that they were no Japanese have been here for what 300 years before World War II kicked off, right? And so, Dominic, to your question, right? What they are doing is they are trying to repeat World War II, only now we are the Germans. Why? Because to Rome, we are the Germans. It's our turn it's our turn to eradicate ourselves so they can take all, the financialists, these Praetorians can take all of our assets and wealth, and particularly they can take $30 trillion in boomer wealth. It's the last accessible collateral pool that could restart their whole system without having to take Russia, without having to be able to conquer Africa, without even actually having to put the investment and time and effort and money into extracting the natural resources of Canada. They're setting this up now. Okay, so how are we going to fight back? Well, who the hell are we? Because we ain't just whites. That's what they did to the Germans. And the Germans had a problem because they were all Germans predominantly. And oh, by the way, people might want to take a look and see how many Jews actually fought in the German army during World War II.
And World War One, yeah.
Well, World War One even more, percentage-wise, even more so. But the thought that
that's right. Yeah, World War II.
There were no Jews who fought in the German army and even in the SS in World War II is a falsity. Right? Our arguments about and there's also arguments and claims of a lot of people who just claimed that they had no Jewish blood, et cetera, and really did. Right? We've been admixing with people all, forever. So, okay, how do we not fall into the trap that the Germans did? Well, first off, we don't look at ourselves as a people as all white, while at the same time not falling into the counter trap they set to force us into that.
The multicultural utopia.
Correct, right? This diversity thing. Well, that's a total fucking lie. Multiculturalism a lie. The only reason diversity and multiculturalism looked like it was working is because the government was running up trillions of dollars of debt to paper it all over.
Yeah.
To fund the lie that, so as the economy, in direct proportion to the collapse of our economic base, government spending increased. Well, why did I have a different argument about why we offshored labor. I think we offshored labor because we were bringing in people into our country and putting them into jobs that they couldn't do. And so we had to send manufacturing and the increasing higher level jobs to parts of the world where they had the intelligence and the capabilities to do the work. Because we had this, to your point, Dominic, since the late 1800s, we've been a progressive people and we need to bring people in and we needed to do all these things. Our collapse of our economy has been in direct proportion to the amount of unwanted immigration and incapable immigration that we brought in. That's all been propped up through social welfare programs, starting in the 30s, right, in the Great Depression, and then just jet fuel, JP4 being poured on in the 1960s and since, right? Yeah, I think we outsourced because we realized if we were on this path of just immigrating and bringing in all of these people, we couldn't do the work anymore.
Yeah, and you kind of can paper over it for a while. I mean, you see it all the time on like YouTube, the stuff that I was just, if people are curious, I mean, just use incognito, log out of your YouTube account, and then get on YouTube.
Yeah,
like sure, some things are going to be raw numbers, but you can see where all this stuff is being like no one watches Stephen Colbert. Like no one watches any of this dog shit.
Yeah.
But there's enough money being pushed into it that it's also why it's like weird that all these shows are, finally going out now that USAID is over. It's like, yeah, somebody
all the influencers.
Yeah,
all the YouTube influeers.
Yeah, because you're getting glossed over. Yeah. You know who's still going? this gorilla podcast, and that will eventually be why we're all killed, but it'll at least be charming. Yeah.
That one episode.
Yeah,
You
which
know, though,
one?
Tommy,
Like
when that
that.
happens, you will have finally arrived.
Yeah, no, it'll be great. That's when the show will make it. No, that's what I say. This is how much this has fucked me in the head. It's like I view my own death now as like, man, but the show would get some numbers. Like that's how deeply I've just like thrown myself into this now. It's like there's a tactical. It's just like me with a bunch of boardroom members. Like, no, there's an upside to you dying. I'm like, all
Yeah,
right,
but it's not the same if it's just you. You got to take out like half the population with you.
yeah, yeah. But the point is no, you can gloss over stuff
Correct.
if you just lubricate it with trillions of dollars for a while.
Yes.
You
Yeah,
can
for
do
a
it
while.
for a
Yeah.
while, right? You
So
can
what's
for
the
yeah,
while for us? Turns out to be about a century.
yeah,
And how do you paper over it even more? Every once in a while, you have a big old war,
sure,
right? You have a terrorist attack, or you have some kind of, touching our boats kind of event,
yeah.
right? Now we've moved beyond touching boats to touching our buildings event, right? You ever notice how it's not kill our people, right? You killed our people. It's like, no, you touched our boats or you blew up our buildings. So, back to, you know, we're going to have to figure out real quick who's American and who's not. What does that mean? And what does it mean in the different ethnic groups? And then those ethnic groups are going to have to set to work cleaning up their own house, meaning their own ethnic group. And then we're going to have to form alliances with one another in ways that we haven't done in a long time,
How does this, if at
maybe
all,
ever. What's that?
how does this, not to throw a wrench in the gears, how does this tie into our seemingly imminent military action in or over or on Venezuela?
We're not doing military action in Venezuela.
I don't think so.
No, we're just doing the
All
same.
right.
We're burning out the British infrastructure, the Roman 2.0 infrastructure.
Oh, I don't doubt that stuff's there. I mean, in
Yeah.
terms of just like, but in the physical location is the U.S. military over what we agree is called Venezuela.
That's actually about owning and controlling the Gulf of America writ large, from the Caribbean to to South and Central America and the East Coast of Mexico. Because if and when a civil war goes down in the United States, you're going to have two massive routes of travel from the South. One's up through Mexico, the other one's up through Venezuela and the Caribbean. So you have to shut that down. And the money laundering, right? So the funds that get laundered, the $1 trillion a year that gets, illicitly earned in the United States alone, gets laundered in Caribbean banks. And the British and the French, the Europeans, et cetera, all have military facilities in the Caribbean, ports, logistics centers, all of that. So you put a fleet in there. It's all it takes is one, and you burn out their ability to earn illicit funds, to launder illicit funds, to move weapons, to move ammunition, to move explosives, to move leadership by sea. Mexican border, you deal with the Mexican border, you deal with why is California in the enemy's hands? Why are all the port states or port cities, at least, in enemy hands? Almost every single one of them I've written on this. The United States is set up for invasion, straight up. So you have to own and control the Gulf of America. You have to. You shut down all those routes of travel. You shut down all of that illicit stuff. You shut down any of the war fighting movement, war material, all of that kind of stuff. Right? Because yes, it's hard to get across the two oceans without being seen. It's way easier to get across the Gulf of America. And if they've been staging, so 90% of the material that was supposed to go to Ukraine never went to Ukraine. Where is it?
Venezuela.
Good portion of it.
Yeah,
Another
South
good portion of
America.
it was in Qatar,
Mm.
right? Portions of it in Eastern Europe.
But point being is it I get it that it's like we're attacking the Venezuelan people. I get it, the roots and the words there. But the patch of land where this is happening is Venezuela.
Yeah, it's well in Colombia.
Well, that's
and
what I'm asking is
Paraguay and
are we going to be doing military action that regardless of what we're fighting against or what we're trying to stop, is there going to be in the most basic, like no nuance, like bombs on soil in Venezuela?
maybe.
That's what I'm yeah,
But
that's what
if
I'm
it
asking.
happens, it'll be like Qatar and Iran.
Just what precision strikes.
Very precision strikes and not taking out the things that we are told that we're taking out. We're taking out this, British, we're taking out Rome 2.0 stockpiles for the war against us.
Do you think that's what was in that tanker ship?
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a second one now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think more than arms and munitions and explosives, it was leadership because we're in a phase 5, phase 6 transition in unconventional war right now. And this is where you start moving leadership around.
And
You
isn't
start infiltrating.
and Venezuela's now like yeah, they're now what word am I looking for? They're accompanying, they're escorting
That's
with their
correct.
yeah, they're not doing that for oil. I get it. Oil's very valuable.
Well,
I'm
they
not
are
saying it's
actually.
not,
They are.
but not
So,
exclusively oil.
well, no, but hold on a second. We need to maybe not think that the Venezuelan government and our government, the current administration, aren't working together,
Could be.
right? So Qatar has invested $1 trillion. They own like half the real estate in London now. Why? Because they were instructed to do so. Qatar is a British project. Venezuela is a British project, right? So what happened? We allowed Qatar to get hit. The Iranians hit it and showed that they can. They showed that the Iranians showed that they could hit Qatar anywhere, anytime. Okay, we let that happen. They gave us warning ahead of time. We pulled our people out. Then the British kept doing more fuckery. So we let Israel hit them. And then what happened? We sent a diplomat, a whole team actually, and we worked out deals with the Qataris. You show us where all the British stuff is. You articulate all this British infrastructure, man. It's really human infrastructure mostly, right? Because where are the headquarters in the Middle East for most of the intelligence communities? Qatar. And they've been there forever, right? So what do? We went in. It looks like Qatar is going to get taken out. And then we went into the Qataris, to the emir, and said, we'll protect you, we'll back you, but you're going to give us this information. And then and he did. And we signed agreements. And then what happened? The United States came out publicly and stated, anybody who strikes Qatar, we will wipe you out. We will strike you back. Same thing's happening in Venezuela right now. Same thing.
What does the progression look like then in Venezuela, around Venezuela? That just as a general theme. What does
If
the
I was going
progression
to
look
do a
like?
dirty nuke in the United States, I would do it somewhere on the eastern seaboard. Highest density populace, right? And where would that have to come out? It would have to come out of the Caribbean or out of Venezuela.
But you
Because
think
you can track it across the sea. You can track it mostly across the Canadian border, et cetera, because we heavily monitor all that.
but you think that's what's coming?
I think that's what they're trying. We don't know
Sure.
that it wasn't a dirty nuke on that oil tanker
Sure.
because that is the natural progression. And they've tried it twice in Ukraine already.
Yeah. Yeah. Then the head of the Ukrainian whatever nuclear commission come out and he's like, I personally saw the fissile material or the depleted material, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's important.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay, you
a
lock
little,
down the Gulf of America and you deny them that route of travel. Now, here's the other thing 35 ships, 36 ships, and 200 plus aircraft in a carrier group, plus all the support, et cetera. You want to take a guess at how many sensors there are on every single one of those vessels?
Yeah. Well, so that's what I'm asking is what does it look like there? Like, what is it? Is it us just continually seizing ships? Is it outright blockade? Is it that's what I'm at. Like
Yes.
I get the bigger picture of someone else is using it as a puppet to do X, Y, and Z, but
Yeah.
right there.
It's deny any freedom of movement out of Venezuela that doesn't have sensors looking at it, broad spectrum,
Yeah.
multivariant sensors looking at it. Right? We didn't seize all their oil tankers. We've only
Yeah.
seized two.
Yeah.
Two.
Which is why
We let the rest go.
That's what I'm saying. It's like if you're just going for mass, you would get all of it.
Well, you
And it
just block
doesn't,
the ports,
yeah, and it
right?
doesn't
They wouldn't
seem
be
to
able to
be
get out
that.
at all.
Yeah, it doesn't
Correct.
seem to be that. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we are helping the Maduro government, Venezuelan government, break free of this British CIA MI6 control, the Devil's Legions, while making sure that we don't get a dirty nuke somewhere on the eastern seaboard, and or that Azov leadership isn't flooded in with some jihadis to do some terrorist shit. See, in the Cold War, we built this extraordinary sensor network for the North because nukes were going to come over the Arctic, right? We weren't so worried about England nuking us at the time. And even Chinese nukes were going to come up over, right? So we have extraordinary detection capabilities in the Pacific Northwest and Alaska. And we have extraordinary detection capabilities from the Midwest over the East Coast, in, the Northeast, to watch for, things coming over, if you look at the map, left or right side of the Arctic, right? But we didn't need to worry at all about building those sensor networks. This is why Cuba was such a big deal. We didn't have the massive sensor capabilities looking into the Southern Hemisphere. Okay, so you flood a carrier group in there that's got all that natural native to it, right?
Yeah.
It's got all of that. And then you take using certain titles and authorities and you send DOW guys as advisors into Venezuela, who are also carrying sensors and know how, know what component, counterproliferation guys like I used to do with DITRA, right? Well, with the CIF, working with DITRA.
The game I always mentioned to you guys when I was telling Tommy about nuclear option is like, if I'm ever like fucking around and make my own custom maps, it's so tedious to add all the different radars and missile systems. So what I'll do is I just found the cheapest, the easiest way. Because literally just there's no rule. There's the physics engine allows it. I'll just put an aircraft carrier on top of a mountain. It's just sitting there jutting out of the snow. All the sensors, it's got everything. I just use that. If I need something, I'll legitimately just put like destroyers and frigates on a highway somewhere. Completely out of place, but it works. So you get it done like that.
Correct. Tom, you get it. That's why the carrier group's there.
Yeah.
It is a massive Southern Hemisphere oriented detection network.
Yeah.
That we couldn't do any other way.
Yeah, you couldn't build the Canadian early warning line.
Correct.
You can, but you're that decades, right?
It took us 40 years.
Yeah,
50, 60 years.
Yeah. You can't, yeah.
And you can't sustain air, and you need ground, and you also need other authorities because unfortunately you've got Title 10 guys going up against Title 50 guys in operations and the 5I equivalents, etc. So it's a complicated mess, and you don't want any of it out in the public, and you don't want to broadcast it, and you don't want to cause fear and panic, particularly when you're doing pretty good on other fronts of resetting America to the Americans. Right? You don't want to get everybody distracted by this. You want to take care of it as low visibility as you can.
Sure.
But EM, I've got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Well, one is, and I know you and I have talked about this. I don't know if we've talked about it on this show, but the idea that if you overlay where in Europe the Spanish flu was the most virulent and killed the most people, and then you overlay that with early support for the Nazi parties, it's like 100% match, right? Yes. And so you have a disgust sensitivity kicker in the mix. Do you think that COVID was intended to play a similar role? Right? Clean, unclean, vaccinated, unvaccinated. Like that seems like a very interesting narrative to play around with.
Except it failed.
Except it failed, right?
Right? Except it failed. But yes, no, Dominic, you're absolutely right. Except it failed. Now, here's the thing. It didn't fail amongst the commies. Or the commie lights.
Half the population it worked on.
Well, to some degree, right?
To some degree,
right? But not to the disgust level, right? Not to the virulent, if you're not vaxxed or you don't have a mask or whatever kind of level. The Spanish flu worked because it killed a lot of people.
Right.
Legitimately killed a lot of people, and family members had people died. 90% of the COVID numbers are made up. Most people who died of COVID died from the vaccine, not from COVID, or they died from a comorbidity that they couldn't be seen in the hospital for because everybody was focused on COVID. Right. So, this, I touch on this in Azarone Burns, right, in one of the chapters where the Institute is, on behalf of the organization, is working on a new form of bubonic plague that they have, immunoresponse for, and the retrovirals and antibacterials to be able to counter themselves because COVID didn't work, right? So what is another way that you can kick in the same kind of disgust? Rape.
Interesting.
Rape gangs. Muslims praying in the main streets, right? So if you're afraid of doing a disease again because it turns out we can't genetically modify things and genes don't play as important as roles we think, then you're going to have to use an actual disease and it can run away real quick.
Okay.
Right? When the Spanish flu killed something like, I don't remember the numbers, so I'm not going to touch that, but it was non-negligible number of people in a much smaller population. Right? Imagine a Spanish flu-like disease in 8.5 billion people.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to run away quick, right? Just because of population densities, human movements, and all of that, right? And then just the way it's evolving inside the human body, communities, etc. So you don't want to use that. So what do? You do a different form of virulent parasitism that kicks in similar disgust mechanisms. And so that's why they're allowing the rapes and the crime and all this other stuff.
Interesting. Okay.
Right. And so then where do you see? Look at the kids, right? I get hit all the time when I do some anti-Nazi thing. I did something the other day and I had all kinds of accounts come after me and say, what other choice is there? What other option is? If you take a look at where those accounts are, yes, half of them are not real. They're overseas, but the others are in the cities where this stuff is happening. Right. So it's the same disgust mechanism. It's just they don't want to use the disease this time.
Okay.
Because it would, when you have 8.5 billion people, that disease's evolution could run away real quick and wipe out, right? They'd rather go nuke because a nuke's more predictable than a disease with a population this large.
Well, I wonder if, to your point of dirty bomb, does the dirtiness of the dirty bomb in the naming maybe have a discuss sensitivity element that built into it also?
Correct. Because there are only two psychological conditions that lead to all-out ethnic slaughter: religious ideology, fundamentalism, right? Whether it doesn't matter what religion it is, people really got to look at Christian history and see the horrible shit Christians did for 1,000 years, right? No different than the Muslims today. Hate to say it, folks. The only difference is we ate pork, right? And we had Catholic girls. And the other one is so religious fundamentalism. What was the other one? Terribly sorry, I lost my.
Disgust mechanism.
Dirty bomb.
Dirty bomb. Yeah. Well, dirt, filth, violence, crime. But so it's religious ideology will give you that kind of fervor. I just lost the other one. There's one other that's of a similar vein of disgust that will give you that just all out slaughter. And generally,
you touched on this before. Was it effeminate men, weak men?
It's at some point what's done to our women kicks in a disgust mechanism because now our women have been dirtied and are untouchable. And we just go all wrath and ruin and slaughter. And is that not what they've been doing? Making our women dirty and untouchable since the 60s?
Yeah.
Taking off in the last, with OnlyFans and everything else?
Yeah. Yeah, no, but it's in general. It's like, yeah, it's not even, they call it hoflation. But it's just like, yeah, man, as you look at it now, it's like, it's sad that it's a win to find a girl who doesn't have, $9,000 of tattoos on her and 15,000 partners and
Yes.
blue hair and septum piercing. It's like that's the threshold now for
Women,
like, oh, she
women
doesn't
in
have
times,
those.
women in times of all-out raiding seasons and wars were never defiled as much as our women do to themselves now.
Yeah, no, it's trash. It is. There's the disgust mechanism.
It's a war on women.
Yeah, no,
Why? Because at a certain point, when you let the young men loose and they realize that there's no women available to them because they've all been taken or they're all been, ruined, men have no, young men particularly, and even middle-aged men have nothing but wrath and ruin. They'll burn everything to the ground
yeah,
because they're disgusted,
yeah.
right? And they need a new pool of women that aren't filth. So they're going to kill the other tribe to take theirs.
Mm.
Right? People, we are all still driven by the most primordial freaking behavioral patterns ever,
Oh yeah, yeah.
ever. Right? Anybody's honest with themselves sits down a moment and goes, "Boy, I'm barely civilized."
Oh yeah, no, it's
Right?
yeah, no, it is yeah, it is a very thin, glossy veneer of like I'm a human. I took a shower today, and it's like, all right. I walk upright. Okay, that's two. I went to the store today and I paid with a card instead of a gun. Three. All right, it's all right.
It's a constant daily struggle for every one of us to be civilized in our own thoughts, much less our own actions.
True.
Right? I work very hard. I've meditated for 25 years straight at one period. 25 years of hard meditation, trying to remove biases and prejudices and, all this program stuff. Even so, there's at least 3 or 4 times a day, some little thought pops up in my mind. I tell it to shut the hell up.
Yeah, I can't remove it. The best thing I've gotten through 15 years of meditation is best case scenario is I observe them and
Yes.
I'm aware that they're there,
Yes.
as opposed to just, like none of us here are thinking about speaking English. We just do.
Yes.
It's, the closest I've gotten with meditation is I observe it and go, oh, there's a thing. Let alone, I mean,
Yeah. The
I'm at the Wright
287.
Flyer, not the space shuttle.
Yeah. So disgust is being triggered intentionally, right? What is it being triggered for? They want us to do hard ethno-nationalist slaughter. Anybody who's not white,
And then in hopes that we do that to our own demise.
to our own demise. That we are the modern Germans and
Yeah.
that America never recovers and is broken up, right? So as much as they want to break Russia up, they want to break us up more. Why?
The
Because we're the only check and balance on what they've been doing for thousands of years. And Putin said it openly. Putin openly stated, we are not part of your Rome.
Yeah, it's right, the give your enemy a golden bridge to retreat across. It's kind of, you put ethno-nationalism or Nazism, and I get how at face value you go, what other choice do we have? We got to band together, we got to tribe up, and you're not even wrong. But they've put landmines on the golden bridge.
Correct. 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 And they've been conditioned us to this for 40 years. They know exactly what they're doing because they've done it before. And people are like, oh, it's a conspiracy. Well, this conspiracy succeeded in the last century. You think they're not going to at least try it again in this century? Right? Do you think that was just some kind of like fungal bloom that made all that happen? That shit was carefully constructed and carefully
Yeah.
brought about, right? So, okay, we are back to tribes. We've been forced to it. Okay. I'm not opposed to that. We shouldn't be opposed to that. But we need to clean up our own tribes. And then we need to reach across tribes and form alliances with tribes that have been here on this land and have been, who have shed their family's blood and treasure in defending our civilization, not just the land, but our civilization and way of life. Right? I've served with some pretty badass black guys. I've also served with some pretty shitty black guys. I've served with a lot of shitty white guys. I've served with some pretty badass, I'm going to, Clay and I've taken, I started to call him, and now Clay's doing it as well, but Spanish, right? Hispanics, Latinos, Mexicans, whatever you want. Yeah, let's stop using their labels. These are all Spaniards. They're Spanish civilization. They're a civilization that's as old as ours, right? There are as many Spanish speakers. Actually, there's more Spanish speakers, native Spanish speakers on Earth than there are native English speakers, including the 400 million native English speakers in India. Right? Spanish civilization is the whole western part of the United States, all the way up into Canada. Underneath is Spanish. They were here 200 years before we got here. Now, is it their land? Yeah, sorry, we kicked your ass. It's ours.
Yeah.
But you've been here and you fought in every war with us, and you fought for this civilization for generations. Like I know Spanish families, right? Spanish families, again, Latinos, Hispanics, Mexicans, etc. I know families have had 3, 4, 5 generations of their families who've served in the military and fought in our wars.
So, Ian, that raises the question, okay, we're going to end up going tribal, and then we need a self, non-self immune
group, out group. Yeah,
in group, out group marker for those other tribes to make
Correct.
alliances with, right? And
Correct.
so, that is an interesting project because let's just assume that the other side is basically following what you have laid out, and it works, like you've said, that they're not stupid and they have a system that works towards those ends. We can't stop it dead in its tracks because it's trillions of dollars and decades worth of time. What is the Aikido-ish response to take all of that energy and time and money that's gone in Nazi, and then at the last minute turn it just enough to where it doesn't do what they thought it was going to do?
Okay, I think you're going to appreciate this reference. We Steven Seagal them.
Okay, hit me.
No sharp angles, no sharp corners, rounded movements, turns, flowing with everything, and then all of a sudden the sudden sharp freaking snap. Right? Steven Seagal in the early days, take all the other stuff aside and the fact that, he ate like 30 people and gained 3 Steven Seagals in weight. And
best clip ever of Steven Seagal is some movie where some Japanese guys yelling at him and he just goes, "Speak English." It's the dumbest. And I think he was speaking English like that. It's just something like 3 people always come speak English.
But sorry, if you look at him, I'll give you another one, Dominic, because you've been in Hollywood a long time, generations, and you're also a martial arts guy. Another guy that I think would be somebody we'd want to look at, not for the martial capabilities, but for the concepts, right? That flow, that motion, you're laid back, you relax, you're moving, but you got the intent. And if they move, you flow as much as possible, get rid of them, get them out of the way, right? If you have to break them, you have to, et cetera. You do that. The other one is Jeff Speakman. Remember Jeff Speakman?
I don't think I know.
In the 90s. Jeff Speakman was another, and he was Shaolin Kenpo. The Descasos family. The guy that did the Crow TV series. He's got the Iron Chef now. That's the Descasos family. That's Shaolin Kenpo. Interesting family, by the way. The other families of the Castro family up in the Bay Area, same art. But no, I think Aikido is the right concept and idea, right? What is the difference? So I studied Isshin Ryu Karate and Taekwondo when I was young, right? In Taekwondo was hurt them before they hurt you. Isshin Ryu Karate was, give me 1 second. So hit them before they hit you. Don't let them hit you. And then Aikido is don't let them hurt themselves. Right? Don't let them hurt themselves. Do what you got to do. Right? But recognize who and what you are. Recognize, we are tribes that own this place and this land. We've earned that in wars. We've earned that in working together. We've earned that in coming across, in surviving our own tribal warfare. But everyone, and so, okay, well, we don't want to do that. We don't want to fight each other. We don't want to battle each other. We'll dance, we'll move, we'll flow around, we'll, toss you aside if you need to, if you give me the angle. But every once in a while, if I got to snap your wrist or your arm or your neck, okay. But what do we have to try to do? We have to try and keep our enemies from hurting themselves. Why? Because if we set out to hurt our enemies, we're going to wind up like the Germans. We're going to hurt our enemies in vast numbers. Tens of millions of people will die in this country, but we will destroy ourselves in the process. And this gets back to the Steven Seagal. And this is one thing why people make fun of Aikido, because most of the people that do it is bullshit. But anybody who's really studied Aikido, right, like Sensei's real Aikido, it's pretty good at taking on multiple attackers. Right? It's pretty good at understanding how to flow amongst multiple attackers and keep them mostly running into each other, which you normally do, right? You only got to worry about the 2 feet around you that they have to get actual access to you. Well, okay, how do you take that principle and think about that in community life and broader life?
There's I think it was Dangerous History podcast. He did a series on World War I and the Germans. And EM, to your point, the Germans fought World War one and two in a very German manner, right? And exactly, and the British fought it in a very roundabout, on the oblique, sneaky way. And the Germans, from the German point of view in World War I, they were playing by the rules.
Yes.
And the British really, really weren't, whether it's on the banking side, on the naval side, it was technically speaking illegal to blockade ports for humanitarian relief. The British did it anyway, etc. Right? The British were most certainly shipping war material on civilian liners that Winston Churchill pulled the submarine escorts from. We kind of know all that now. And so how do we not make that mistake? How do we not play on their field with their ball by their rules?
Correct.
Et cetera. And you said something in your last little moments there that I think was very interesting. And it's what you wrote today, defining the heritage Americans. They earned it, right? Other groups have earned their place.
Correct.
And we don't take away things that other people have earned.
Correct.
That the other side does.
Correct.
Right. And so defining who has earned, Tommy, you asked the question earlier, how do we do this? It's like, okay, who has earned their place?
And how?
And how? And from there, it's like, okay, now you can start making self, non-self recognitions.
Yeah. And, again, we are heading into blood. And what is blood? Blood is organic status hierarchy. What's happening is the artificial status hierarchies can no longer be sustained economically, financially, manpower-wise, intellectually. We just can't sustain it anymore. The illusion of multiculturalism and diversity. We can't economically, financially, thermodynamically sustain it anymore. It doesn't matter how much they switch to crypto or anything else. So why all that's going to fail as well. So this goes to blood. Okay. Who are we going to kill? Now, first off, it's not want to kill and not even want to put in camps, but who do we make go home? Because this is not their home. They have not earned it. Okay, well, how do you decide how they earned it? Well, the only thing that I can see that's real, that's been real across all human history and all societies and civilizations ever been, is that their direct family members served in the great conflicts that helped shape those people. Right? Now, does that mean, Tommy, to something you said, yeah, we got a whole lot of people here who, unfortunately, their families earned it, but they're pretty shitty people. And they're the ones behind some of this stuff. Right? Well, okay, so this brings up a point, right? And I haven't thought through all this stuff, right, guys? I've just only come to this old stock stuff in the last day or two. Okay, so you've got an old stock family. Let's say their direct family members fought in all 3 wars. Revolution, Civil, American, maybe even Korean, the GWAT, the Vietnam, right? But they're shitty people who are behind all of this. Maybe they got a lot of money and they're funding these NGOs and these philanthropic organizations that are subsidizing all these invaders. What do we do with them? By definition, they're old stock families. Well, I know what you do. You take their wealth away from them legally. Why? Because the wealth that they have has been earned or has been sustained or is being sustained in ways that are completely counter to America. They're completely counter to English civilization. That invalidates. Now, at the same time, people have to be given a chance of redemption because some of them have been doing that at the point of a gun, under duress. Some of them have been doing it because they're just not terribly bright and they fell for the lies. So, okay, who decides that? Well, white people aren't going to be able to figure that out in the black community. Blacks are going to have to figure that out themselves. And oh, by the way, the whites are even more so than the blacks because most of the blacks, old stock black families are from West Africa and Central Africa, heavily, dominantly, right? But you get some blacks that have come here from other parts of the world since slavery, who've also earned their place as old stock families. So the black community is not one monolithic whole. The white community certainly is not one monolithic whole. Turns out there's a whole lot of different kinds of white people, and we don't like each other. And the English white people are at war with the Roman white people, and we have been for 2,000 fucking years. Right? All out war, winner take all kind of war. So, okay, there's a lot of these nuances, a lot of these complicated things. Then there's other families that maybe aren't old stock families, but they're good Englishmen, good Americans, good Englishmen down underneath, and they're contributing. Right? So how do you decide there? So, okay, I think the first cut is old stock families. They're the ones who are going to be the ones that had the say. On both sides, by the way, right? Continuity of the English civilization, its update, which we're going to have to do, right? And then on the other side, the ones trying to tear it down because they want to change the balance of power to their, even those, they don't want to end the English civilization because that's what their whole wealth and power and status is based off of. They just want a higher place in it, right? They want more power in it than they have. Okay. I think then the second cut is, which families, even of the old stock families of each tribe, are actually working against English civilization, against America. And again, none of this stuff is easy, clean cut. The enemy's carefully been doing this, painting this, impressionistic painting for 60 years.
Well, EM, is it even the job of the males?
No, that's it, Dominic. Now it is our job to do the work, but you get very good. This is the novel, right? As Rome Burns, it's the whole work is the matriarchs, right? I have a brilliant, beautiful Chinese friend of mine. She sent me something. She's going through a bit of a rough transition herself right now. American Chinese, right? Good family. She sent me something the other day. She's just fed up with men. And she's like, the matriarchs have got to restore, that they've got to come back and fix this problem. Why? Because they're the ones, you're absolutely right, Dominic. It's their fight. They're the ones doing this because some set of matriarchs in some tribes have formed the alliances to change the power structure, to change this, to wipe the civilization out so that they have more power, or to rewrite our civilization so that they have more power. That's women. And they're estrogenic males. So they've got to figure that out. Are they going to stand and fight for our civilization? Because ultimately it is the product and it is the product of their wombs that pays the ultimate price for everything. Right? Yes, men pay with their lives, but where do men come from? Women's wombs. So all things, ultimately, all things come down to the burden of women's wombs. So who's really the power? Right? And men can make up all kinds of things and ideas and concepts, et cetera, and barren wombed women and everything else. It doesn't mean anything within 60 years, because if you're not having kids and your kids aren't oriented on the right things, the products of your wombs are not oriented and fighting and defending the right things, the things are gone. Gone. Never to come back. Right? This is what Elon and everybody's so scared about. It's not population numbers, necessarily. It's that we have too many barren wombs. Why? Because the women are not thinking in the ways of, okay, I'm going to put this immense cost and effort into a child or into multiple children, and thereby her life has to get organized around that. Or they are doing that, but they're putting all their efforts and resources into making sure that other women have barren wombs, so they don't have that competition. So, Dominick, you bring up a great point that just popped in my head. And this is chapter 43, by the way, and Azrael Burns have written. I'm going to rewrite it here, but this Princess Annabelle, she's furious about this. What she's furious about is Rome's war against Slavic women that's been going on for over 1,000 years, and how they use the Mongols through the Venetians. You can look that up. Miles Harris does great work on that, how the Venetians were the ones who used the Mongols to attack Europe. I personally believe that Islam was created by Rome as a way to take down and be a constant threat to the Orthodox world, and to justify the Crusades. Almost 90% of the kingdoms and principalities destroyed in the Crusades were Orthodox principalities and kingdoms, not Muslim. Fourth Crusade sacked what city? Constantinople, and established the Latin states. So this is Eastern Rome fighting Western Rome. Wouldn't you create a religion?
Well, they already did it once.
Why not do it again? But now do the antipode and set it loose on, right? And now what are they doing again? Look at the rents that are, who is the largest landlord receiving rents and social services funds for all these immigrants in Europe and the US and across the whole English-speaking world? It's Catholic Church.
Catholic Charities?
Catholic Charities. Right? So you did a whole bunch of pedophilia. You lost half your wealth paying out billions and billions of dollars in lawsuits. How are you going to make up those losses?
Yeah, that's such an interesting point. It just dawned on me that, okay, the Vatican Bank is most certainly a thing, but to the best of my knowledge, not on any layer that I can see, it doesn't issue its own fiat currency. That's an interesting position.
The Vatican Bank is a ledger. The archdiocese operate as their own economic systems, their own financial systems. And what it does is, because it operates as a nonprofit, this is where the concepts and ideas of nonprofits come from, by the way. They zero out as much of the ledger as they can at the parish and the diocese level.
Okay.
Right. And then the Vatican Bank acts as a conduit between dioceses and thereby parishes that, that need a flow of capital, et cetera. But what they try to do in the Vatican Bank is zero out that ledger as much as possible, and then leave the assets out at the diocese. And this is why they survived the whole child molestation thing, because nobody could actually go after the Catholic Church, the Vatican. The way it's structured, they went after each parish and each diocese.
It's interesting.
It's a trust of trusts.
Yeah, no, I mean, I even wonder if the term Vatican Bank is purposefully incorrect because they don't make loans, right? They don't issue a central, they don't issue a currency.
Yeah, well, and it's the same with the Bank of England. That's a misnomer as well. Yes, it does some of those things, but what the Bank of England really is a title company. It's a title holding company. and it uses the title holdings to do lending, to do insurance, and do other things. But the Bank of England is really a title holding company. And it also uses other banks and states, et cetera, and lending mechanisms and currency printing mechanisms, et cetera. But all of that is just balancing the ledger, right? The Bank of England is a title holding company, and all of that, the title it's holding is the collateral for the entire fiat financial system.
Okay, so EM, let's expand the last few minutes of this conversation. If the point of the Vatican Bank is to zero out the ledgers amongst all of the dioceses, and we know that something like a quarter of global GDP is gray or black market, who is doing that same function on the larger scale?
They are. But they are using the Bank of England. They use the Venetians, they use the Dutch, and the City of London, and now BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, and others.
Yeah, but isn't BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard all together? They're not worth very much money, right? Like on paper, that's not the point. They're not supposed to be a profitable entity in and of themselves.
Correct. They're not supposed to be a massive entity in themselves. They need enough capital so that they can raise some money for their own operations and do that. But BlackRock which by the way is owned by State Street and Vanguard, right? So really, it's all State Street and Vanguard. BlackRock's something like $80 billion, $50 billion, $80 billion market cap, but it manages $21 trillion.
Neat trick.
Same thing with the Vatican Bank. Maybe the Vatican Bank's worth $10 billion assets wise.
Right.
But through the way in which it manages the flows of assets amongst and between the archdiocese and the diocese, it's trillions, many trillions.
Oh, so you were talking about kind of like the in the English prelude to the English Civil War, the down ballot, right? Getting the mayors and the police chiefs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, what an interesting conduit into local politics, to have the Vatican Bank structure and the diocese structure already set up that way.
This is Second Rome, and this is what Henry VIII threw out. And when Henry VIII threw out, the Vatican, Second Rome, went to all-out war against the English-speaking people, and we're still in it today. Now they're going to the step 7 of the financial kill chain, which is collapse and abandonment. Right? They're zeroing out the ledger. There's no more to take. The only thing left to take is the boomers' wealth. In order to take the boomers' wealth, the boomers' heirs have to be gone. But the assets still have to have some value, so you flood other people in here, and you paper over it by paying their rents and subsidizing their living. Why? So that the asset values in the boomers' portfolios don't collapse before the boomers age out.
Yep. Believe me, I have a chart on the wall of my office of when it was supposed to be a good idea for me to start investing in real estate. And that chart is bullshit, because back when that chart was printed in the early 2000s, no one suspected the trillions of dollars of bullshit money coming into the real estate market.
Right. Total artificial made up money.
Yeah, the boomer gigantic pile of boomer wealth should already be transferring to their kids, and it's not, which is a very interesting moment in time.
Well, look what's happening in the United Kingdom, where they're using inheritance tax to just take people's assets and farms and everything.
Right.
That's what the intent was here under Harris and et cetera.
Right.
It's why the state, this is why, ultimately there'll be a secession movements here in the United States will be that the states will be trying to break free of the federal government so that they can individually within the states take all of the wealth and assets of the boomers who are dying out to prop themselves up and keep themselves going. Plus also, sever any contracts with multinational corporations or even national corporations for the natural resources in the state, which we remain federal, they can't do, right? Because interstate trade is regulated by the federal government. right?
So,
But
so,
if they
so
succeed, well, they don't have the interstate oversight anymore. Now it's intrastate, and they can do whatever they want.
well, that leads us back, Tommy, to how I think you started this podcast, which is how do you feel about National Guard? In so many states around the country. I think that that may be the answer to your question.
Bing, bing. Right. As well, what are the National Guard being used to do? It's a show of force. So in a color revolution, the color revolutions that succeed are because the state level government didn't demonstrate they were willing to use force. Straight up, the color revolutions that succeed are the ones where the state was reticent to use force or demonstrate we will use force.
And Ian, do you think that that line on, let's just say, the Trump side of things, do you think that that line has already been delineated, or are they waiting for the other side to do something really stupid?
You have to, unfortunately, because of the way in which politics works or the way in which the people are primed, you have to let the other side move first, right? They have to show themselves. This is a mob war. It's a mob war. And if you just start offing one of the families, the other families are going to move against you. So, that's the Sport of Kings stuff I write, with the Corleone family images that gifts that I put in there. You got to let them draw. They've got to show themselves for who they are before you move against them. Otherwise, you'll get rebellion in your own house, right? In your familia or famiglia, right? Well, I'm speaking to an Italian, so in your own family.
Grandma and grandpa refused to speak Italian.
Oh, horrible,
Mm.
horrible.
It was the marketing of the time.
Yeah.
Because they literally were 1920s Ellis Island.
Yeah. They wanted to become American as quick as they could
become American. New York to Chicago to LA. That was that
so your
story
mob
worked for
family.
them. Well, Grandpa left Chicago for reasons that were never specified.
Oh. Well, New York,
and I don't think it's because he was on the winning side.
And LA were all mob towns, right? At that time.
Dude, I mean, so the Hollywood unions have been mobbed up since at least the 30s.
Well, Hollywood itself was created by Bugsy Siegel and Meyer Lansky.
Yep, bunch of people.
Reputation washed the mob. All the early movies were mob movies, and the biggest actors, James Cagney and the others, they did mobster movies.
Yeah, and then nothing changed in the 40s. They went to whitewashing something else.
Well, correct. But even today, reputation washing, what are the movies they actually put the most care into? They're all mob movies. Heat, right?
God, it's a good movie.
Al Pacino did two really good mobster movies. One was Scarface, of course. I got an original poster down the hall, actually, from Scarface. One of my pride and joys. Give me a second. What was the other one?
You mean besides Godfather?
No, well, besides, terribly sorry. Yeah, of course. Yeah, The Godfather. There was another one. Had John Leguizamo in it.
It's Serpico? No,
Carlito's Way.
Yeah.
Carlito's Way. Another brilliant movie. That's the other thing, right? Italians have been here a long time. Italians have fought in our wars.
We found the place.
Well, kind of.
We were being paid by someone to do it, but we found it.
Well, the first mapping expeditions out of England were actually led by an Italian named John Carbote. I can't remember his name. I'll put it up tomorrow when I write this piece or the day after. But yeah, this is where we are, man. Where we are is that it's all about stealing the boomers' wealth. And they're going to do anything they can to try and do that because that's the last collateral in the world that they can take without nuclear war.
I think a huge chunk of it's going to get vacuumed up into, the military, or not the military, the health industrial complex and some form or another. Big chunks of it.
Not really. The whole health complex is actually a scam.
Oh, sure. That's kind of my point.
The insurance companies are the institutional investors and the venture capital funds that do the early investment in creating medical products and services and devices. And so the insurance companies make something like 10 times the amount of money off of their venture, their alternative investing platforms that then they put into their insurance tables and put into the medical industry. So the whole thing's set up from the beginning, right?
It's a self-licking lollipop.
They make 10 times, 20 times, maybe more than that off of the amount of money they make in the stock markets off of those companies that get, wow, this medical device got into, so-and-so's healthcare system, and it's $3 billion a year. And wow, the company behind that went public with a $50 billion valuation.
Wow.
So insurance premiums,
awesome.
insurance spend, all of that's just an illusion to keep the whole thing going. The reality, it's all done by the insurance companies are the ones that are the lead investors in all of the products and services and capabilities that then go into the healthcare system.
Wow. Tommy, there's your harvesting wolf pelts idea.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Motherfucker. Yeah. Well, we've been running this for about 2 hours, so we bring it to a close as I'm also conveniently my brain's cooked right now. I'm trying to follow all this shit. Yeah, man. But I feel like in the broadest terms, yeah, it kind of makes sense. It does kind of make sense, and I imagine we'll continue to see it kind of roll out with the National Guard, with more war material in the Gulf of America and so on and so forth. But I don't know. We're here, and it seems like we've gone past we've kicked the can down the road for many, many decades, and we are far past the end of the road. We're far past the cul-de-sac, and it's like, all right. So
now we're at, do you want to see a dead body?
Yeah, no, yeah, we're at, yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
old movie reference, right?
I was gonna say,
It's Stand By Me.
Stand By Me.
Yeah.
I didn't even know it was a reference. I thought I was just talking about like how fucking.
No. It's a movie reference, right? The kids were bored, and one of the kids had found somebody dead. Tells his friend, "Well, you want to see a dead body?"
It's a call to adventure.
Bored. Yeah.
On that note, on that cheery holiday note, find a dead body, put a Christmas light on it. But Donnie, as always, appreciate your time. Appreciate the conversation.
Man.
Yeah, I'll send it to you guys. It'll be up whenever, hour or whatever. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's, and I imagine we will resume our trios sometime in January.
Awesome, cool. Guys. Take care.
Man. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hey guys, real quick, you guys know Basil Baz, ARC, the Association for the Recovery of Children. I just did a fundraiser with them the other day, and I'm going to put this on to every episode I do. They are Special Forces veterans who physically rescue trafficked children. They have since 1993. They have a 100% success rate. They do not take salaries. They all have day jobs, and they literally rescue sex trafficked children. Donations to them are a tax write-off. I get nothing from them, and they have not asked me to put this on. I've included this little clip on episodes for the last year or so, and I'm just re-recording it because I just got to meet him just 2 days ago for future. It's November 25th, 2025, but this will be on every episode now for the next year. And there is nothing better you can do with your money. If you can support them for even $5, please do that. They truly are doing the Lord's work, and I think we all have an obligation to do that. Thank you so much.
Higher ultraviolet exposure is associated with lower mortality. The United Kingdom is a high latitude and low sunlight country. Researchers there collected data on over 360,000 participants in a study of UV exposure via solarium use. When compared with non-users, solarium users had 15% risk lowered of all-cause mortality, 23% lower risk of cardiovascular mortality, 14% lower risk of cancer mortality, and a 12% lower risk of non-cardiovascular, non-cancer mortality. In other words, all other causes. Quoting the researchers, Our study adds to the growing evidence that the benefits of UV exposure outweigh the risks in low sunlight environments. A link to the original publication is available in the box below the video. Get some UV light this winter. Immerse yourself in the tranquility of the blue. Visit a Blue Room soon. www.blueroom.com.
Hey guys, a huge sponsor of the show is Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food. Clayton lives down in Georgia. He's been on the show before. It's actually nearby where I went to college. They are a huge sponsor of the show. They give me some money every month, even when I don't sell enough to warrant that paycheck. Meaning that the show is not free. It's just that it's free for you. If you guys need prepper food, or if you're just interested in supporting the show, I'd please ask you to go to the link in the description. Go to Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food, promo code TPC for 10% off. 72 servings per pail, 25-year shelf life. These things are, they double as dumbbells. Pasta Primavera, cheesy potato soup, mac and cheese, loaded baked potato casserole, chili mac, cheddar broccoli soup, cheesy lasagna, teriyaki rice. You can get banana chips. There's also raspberries, strawberries, and apples. There's a bunch of freeze-dried fruit, or you can even get seeds to plant your own garden. It's not a bad thing to have. It's like gold or ammunition. It's a good thing to have. It's a bad thing if you have to use it, but it's good. It's good to have it, not need it, than need it, not have it. So that's what I'd say. And if you just want to support the show, please go to the link in the description. Please go support them because they support me. Thank you so much, guys.